Welcome to the Bolt Podcast. I'm Todd Birch, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and mental fitness coach. I'm here to help you unlock your leadership potential and ignite your personal growth. On the Bolt, my guests and I will dive into inspiring stories of transformation, showing how small shifts in mindset can lead to life-changing benefits. We'll explore strategies for overcoming challenges, building high-performance habits, and leading with confidence. If you're ready to embrace a growth mindset and unlock your full potential, then let's ignite your spark today. Listeners, get ready for a powerful and inspiring conversation on the Bolt. Today's guest, Greta Johnson, brings a wealth of experience in public service, law, and advocacy. Greta has spent the last 8 years serving as Director of Communications, Assistant Chief of Staff, and Public Information Officer for Summit County. Before that, she was a state representative in the Ohio House, where she quickly rose to become the lead Democratic member of the Judiciary Committee. A former prosecutor with more than a decade of legal experience, Greta has been a fierce advocate for victims' rights, criminal justice reform, and equality for all. With multiple degrees from the University of Akron, including a JD and a master's in higher education, Greta continues to use her voice and influence to shape policy and serve the people of Ohio with passion, purpose, and integrity. Greta, welcome to the Bolt Podcast, my friend.
Thank you, Todd. That is a very nice complimentary introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, that's short and sweet compared to what you supplied me with. You have quite an impressive background.
Thank you.
Journey.
I still think I'm young, so to hear, that career laid out in front of me, it reminds me that I've been an attorney for a lot longer than I think sometimes.
Yeah. It's been a fun journey for you, huh?
It has been very, very rewarding.
Yeah.
I had no idea that I would be obviously sitting here when I graduated from law school over 20 years ago, but I feel like I've had really good opportunities put in my path. So it's been a great experience.
Yeah. So do you feel like they were put in your path, or you carved your own path? Because you seem like a very determined individual.
I would say yes to both of those. I really do subscribe to, there's a little bit of luck in everything. Mm-hmm. And the harder I work, the luckier I get. I really think that is a quote that I have seen in my life. Mm-hmm. I really feel that I've always had a 5-minute plan, not a 5-year plan.
Interesting.
I feel really strongly that if you're doing the best you can right in that moment, the opportunities will come. So the opportunities being put in front of me, there's some luck to that, being in the right place at the right time, knowing the right people.
Yep.
But the other part is that I work really hard wherever I am so that when opportunities come up, other people, I think of me. Mm-hmm. And I've been very fortunate to have a lot of great people in my life who have thought of me in ways that I might not have otherwise thought of myself.
Yeah. You have to do the work.
Yes.
Right? You have to do the work. And I think that's what some people miss out on.
Yes.
There's no handouts.
No.
And you and I didn't come from silver spoons.
Definitely not.
So that hard work ethic, where do you think that comes from?
Oh, definitely from my parents.
Yeah.
Both of my parents were public servants.
Okay.
So my mom was a teacher, and my dad, when I was very young, was an air traffic controller.
Oh.
And lost his job in 1981 with the air traffic controller strike.
Oh, wow.
And so I watched my dad work lots of different jobs when I was quite young, working his way up at a local factory. And I watched my mom at the same time, who had been a stay-at-home mom. She went back to college. She... long before we were doing classes over Zoom, I can remember my mom getting up very early and watching PBS. They were doing classes through a local community college, and she would watch you know, the lecture in the morning.
Really? On PBS?
Yes.
Oh.
Get us ready.
Cool.
The local PBS.
Right.
Get us ready for school, and then she would go to work and she worked at a grocery store, and she was a police dispatcher, and then put herself through school again to become a teacher. So I have seen both of my parents do whatever needed to be done to keep our family going. But I didn't realize as a kid the sacrifices they were making. I just saw them working hard, and that looked a lot like most of my friends' families, and all of us sort of being from what I would call pretty humble beginnings.
Right.
So that's where I think I just saw it every day. My parents got up and went to work and worked hard. And, we worked hard in the yard, and we worked hard when we were practicing for sports. And they just took a lot of pride in the life that we were all building together.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that. Same here. Blue collar.
Yeah.
Both my parents worked 2 jobs as long as I can remember to help, give us a good education and provide basic things. Right. It was definitely humble beginnings, but I think you get a sense of pride, right? You don't know that at that age, but now looking back and reflecting, you can see where that nucleus was built. So.
I remember saying to my parents, this was probably, over 10 years ago, as I looked back, I didn't know we were poor. And I said that, and my mom said, well, then we were doing something right. I didn't know how much they were struggling at certain times, especially when my dad had lost his job with the FAA. I just didn't know. I was pretty young. I was 4, 5, 6. Sure. But I didn't know.
Right.
We still had what I thought was a very comfortable life.
Right.
So I attribute a lot of that to their hard work and, making sure that I didn't feel that struggle was really important to them.
Yeah, same here. My dad was in the rubber factory, as many in this area were, and got laid off. And I think we were on food stamps for minutes, I was told, but I certainly don't remember that. We always had food and shelter, the basic necessities. And if we wanted something extra or nicer, then we went and worked for it.
That's right.
So I was shoveling snow, mowing grass, then a paper boy, and so I've always worked.
Yes.
To get the fancy pair of cleats or the BMX bike or whatever it was.
Yeah. I think we talk about that being humble and working hard, but at the time I didn't know. I was very sheltered in a way that I did not have a good world understanding of what poverty really looked like and what real financial struggles looked like. We were not vacationing every summer or, doing fancy things ever. And there was one car that usually needed fixed in the driveway. But I feel lucky that was as bad as it ever got for us.
Right.
So I'm sure you...
Same thing. We were actually just talking about this the other night about vacations as kids. And I don't remember, maybe Myrtle Beach once.
Right. We went to Virginia Beach once and went to Florida once when I was in high school. And
right. Easy one that you could drive to. I know we certainly didn't fly. I don't ever remember flying, but Good stuff.
It was different. But I have no, when I look back, there's no longing for having something different. I had the greatest childhood, great childhood friends, the neighborhood gang, riding our bikes all over town.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah. Playing football.
Yes.
Wiffle ball, some sport, whatever it was. I'd rather do that than go on vacation.
Right. That's what my summers were filled with.
For that.
For sure. I was telling my kids the other day, they all walk around with these giant water bottles.
Oh my gosh, those huge Stanley cups.
I can't remember drinking water as a kid.
It was Kool-Aid.
Right.
When you went to someone's house, it was the nasty Kool-Aid.
The little hugs or I don't remember. We'd hit our bikes in the morning. I don't, maybe a drink from a hose, to be very cliche.
No.
But that was it. We didn't have these expensive water bottles that they can't go without now. So
yeah, if any water, it was from the spigot or the hose, which was
nasty.
From the hose was nasty. You could smell and taste the difference.
But if you were thirsty enough,
you did it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Were you a tomboy growing up?
I I guess sort of.
Okay. Because you were always pretty involved in sports, right?
Yes, but I grew up in a very small town, and the only sport I played when I was little was like t-ball and softball. That was all that was available.
Okay.
Before you got into junior high. There wasn't
Right.
a youth league for a lot of things. There were little basketball clinics here and there. I was just very much playing with kids all the time. We had lots of kids our age. I have an older brother, but there were a lot of kids in the neighborhood right around that, 5 years. So we were just, bike riders playing in the backyard, putting up a volleyball net then. So I guess kind of a tomboy, but man, did I love my Barbies.
Okay.
Gosh, yes. So, I sort of a mix of both.
Yeah.
I would help my dad wash cars in the driveway, but, help my mom in the kitchen. So sort of a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. So you hung the volleyball net. Was that your first foray into what would be kind of a career in volleyball?
I think so. I can remember playing in the backyard a little bit, but really didn't get super invested into it until high school.
Yeah.
I had a great high school volleyball coach who invested in kids. She really took the time to know the athletes on her team, and she started with a couple of other local high school coaches a junior Olympic club program for some of us who really wanted to see what else was available to us. So yeah, just again, like I said, I was putting in the work, but I got really lucky to have invested adults in my life who were willing to do a little extra work to give me the opportunity to see what I could really do. So very lucky in that regard, and I'm happy to see that sport has really, really grown.
Oh yeah, it has. I love watching it, especially the college.
Yeah.
It's so fun to watch.
It's a very different game even now than when I was in college. So much faster.
Oh, it is crazy.
Yes. The girls and women are so athletic.
And how hard.
Oh,
I mean, what are we talking? How fast are those coming in, those spikes?
Well, and a lot of the girls and women playing now really specialize in one sport.
Yeah.
And I was, I played volleyball in the fall, basketball in the winter, and we played
the trio.
Sure. And now there's really this push to be just a one-sport athlete. So I think they're hyper-focused on those skills.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good, bad, or indifferent.
Right.
We could have a whole conversation.
I know. We could spend an hour talking about youth sports.
Because it's changed.
Yes.
But so this led you into, because you ended up playing varsity volleyball at the University of Akron.
I did.
Yeah.
It was a great opportunity to be able to put myself through college.
So let's talk about this amazing career, very impressive career. Did you know as a kid that you wanted to get into law? A lot of kids, right? What are you going to be? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer.
No, I mean, I was definitely a smart mouth kid who I know I heard several times, oh, she's going to make a great lawyer. But when I was in college, my undergraduate degree was in secondary ed. I thought I was going to be a high school English teacher. That was
okay.
The path I was on.
What changed?
I decided to go to grad school. Again, working hard, great opportunity in front of me to continue my education, grad school. I worked for the senior woman administrator in the athletic department as her grad assistant. She and I came to Akron at the same time. Her first year as an admissions professional was my first year on campus, and she was just very supportive, offered me the position, and I was like, that sounds great. I don't have to get a real job yet. I can keep going to school.
Right. On campus, perfect, really, right?
And I was very interested in learning more about the administrative side of college sports.
Oh, okay.
The mid to late 90s were really creeping up on that pivotal shift of the conversation of paying student athletes, monetizing their performance, or, there was a lot of discussion happening. because it's such a big business.
It is.
So I was very interested in learning about the business side of college sports. So I worked on my master's degree in higher ed, sort of at that point thinking, I'll stay in higher ed and perhaps athletic administration. And then I was working on that, and I had a great class where the professor was from Tri-C. He was teaching the law of higher education, and I loved that class. I didn't love all of my master's classes, but that one in particular was exceptional. And this is a ridiculous story, but it was one of those classes that was at night. It was like 6:30 to 9:30 once a week.
That's a rough.
It's a rough one. I was working during the day, going to school at night, and we had a 15-minute break. And I walked outside, and old school Bierce Library. They had sandwich boards outside the library about what was going on, and there was a law school fair that night. And I was like, oh, I'm in a law class. Let me just wander in and see what this is all about. And I started walking around. And there were some law students who were, repping their schools. And this one guy said to me, well, you're signed up to take the LSAT, right? And maybe me, I'm like, yeah, obviously. I'm signed up to take the LSAT. Who isn't? And so I'm taking this information. And then as I'm leaving, I see a folder that has LSAT information. I'm like, well, I'm going to grab that. I get home that night. And it turns out that the deadline to sign up for the LSAT was midnight of that night, and that was the late registration. So this is back in the days of dial-up. So I'm on my computer, beep, boop, booping, sign up for the LSAT that night at 11:30, did a quick 2-day class locally on how to take the LSAT, took the LSAT 3 weeks later, graduated with my graduate degree on, I think it was Sunday, and started law school on Monday. So it was really, really fast.
Wow, no time to even really take that in and reflect. It was kind of a knee-jerk.
Yeah, I just have always trusted my gut.
Yeah.
And that was one where I was very certain in that moment. And once I took the LSAT, I was... I was finishing up that last semester of grad school, and it started to become real, oh, I can do this. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate enough to do well enough on the LSAT that there was some financial assistance available that made it a little easier to say yes. Because when I called my parents and said, hey, guess what?
Yeah.
Not quite done yet. They were not surprised at all, though. I think. So, those early folks who at 8 and 9 years old said, oh, this kid's going to be a lawyer. They knew it before I did, certainly. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. In the moment. I mean, that's a big shift in the moment.
Yeah.
So really trusting your gut. And that changed the trajectory.
No question.
Of your life and your career.
No question.
Wow. So take us through the next steps into your first jobs and then this amazing appointment that you get on the Democratic member.
Yeah. So I started law school, and I remember saying my first year of law school, I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I know it's not criminal law. I knew that for certain. Okay. I started out thinking I wanted to do some contractual work. Was interested in using my athletic background, perhaps doing some agency work, repping athletes, something like that, where there was some negotiation involved, but I was thinking about that. And then the first job I had between my first and second year of law school was working in the legal clinic at the university where we did criminal defense work. And there was something in my head that said, this makes sense to me. I wasn't great at contract work. Civil procedure did not speak to my heart. But criminal law made sense to me in a way that felt very natural. And then the following year, I started working in the City of Akron prosecutor's office. I worked for GERT. So GERT has been a part of my story since I was a law student.
Okay.
And again, had amazing opportunities there because of people like Gert who just took me along wherever she went. And so I really fell in love with the criminal justice system and how it worked and why it was important to have good people in it. and did some work in Mahoning County, came back to Summit County, went back to work for GERT as a prosecutor and police legal advisor. And I have said often I have prosecuted every kind of criminal case, from a seatbelt violation to a capital murder case and everything in between.
Oh, gosh.
And has been truly some of, I think, the most profound experience I'll ever have as a professional or as a person, for sure. Was working for GERT at the city of Akron, and I get this random text from a woman who worked for the mayor at the time, Mayor Plisquelic, who was my boss, essentially. I worked for GERT. GERT reported to the mayor, report to the mayor's office at 1:00. Well, this can't be good. I went to GERT, and I was like, what is this? And she's like, girl, I don't know. So I go down there, and in his conference rooms, the mayor, at the time, Executive Russ Pry was in there, the law director for the city was in there, and then a friend of mine, Phil Montgomery, who I work with now, he was working for the mayor at the time, he's standing there.
Oh, so gives you get all the heavy hitters.
He gives me this big hug. I'm pitted out. I'm sweating. The mayor report here, GERT doesn't know why. I'm like, somebody died or I'm getting fired. Phil gives me a big hug, and I'm like, well, this is getting really weird. I need somebody to tell me what's going on. And it was, we've got this great opportunity for you. We think you would be a great candidate for state rep. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? What?
Deep breath.
Yeah. But at the time, sort of like the law school story, I knew immediately that I was going to say yes. Yeah. Now, I had, interestingly, 1-year-old twins at home.
Oh, boy.
At the time.
Yeah. A little bit more to think about.
A little bit more to think about.
Decision.
Yeah. But my gut immediately was like, say yes to this. Yeah. But I took a couple hours. And again, so lucky, because everyone I talked to, like, you needed to call 3 people, and they were all, if you're in, we're in. It was a very supportive, if this is, I'm all in. So I got lucky in that regard of having people in my life who were very supportive of that decision, because I said, my gut is saying to say yes. Mm-hmm. So, okay, well, we're all saying yes then.
Right.
Interestingly, that was a Friday. I had to file my petitions by Wednesday. So I had about 4 days to circulate and collect signatures. Filed the petitions on Wednesday. And it really was a situation where it was a primary race. So I had about 90 days to run and win. So really an all hands on deck from my family and friends. We ran the campaign out of my garage. Fueled by DeCecco's and Pierre's Pizza. And, I have people in my life who walked in more parades for me than I did because I was doing other events.
Right. We'll be right back after this short message. Hey, it's Todd again. Did you know that mental fitness is the secret weapon for transformational leadership? Your mind may be sabotaging you, leading you down a path of stress and negativity. But it doesn't have to be this way. If you're ready to unlock the resilience to empower yourself and the team you lead, listen up. Through the Positive Intelligence Program, PQ for short, I help leaders build mental strength, manage stress, and boost emotional intelligence. Imagine reducing burnout, improving your relationships, and increasing performance, all backed by neuroscience. I'm living proof of its power, having built my own mental fitness with PQ over the last 5 years. Ready to build yours? Visit toddbirch.com or email me at tb@toddbirch.com for a free consultation. Now let's get back to the show. Should we talk more about your experience there?
Sure. It was a very unique time to be there. So I was elected in 2014. My first term started in 2015. So we are really on the precipice of, the Trump election, the first Trump election, and the way the dynamics of politics locally and nationally changed. So it was a really interesting time to be there. I don't recommend it. It was rough. So as a Democrat, I was in the deepest minority Democrats had ever seen in the state house. It dipped a little bit even below that, and there's been redistricting since. But really tough to be in the super minority where I don't want to say it didn't matter if we didn't show up, but the majority had control of the House so that they could carry any legislation they wanted. So it really became about readjusting my priorities and sort of my expectations about how am I going to make this meaningful for the people I'm serving. It was no longer about what my agenda was. I went down there thinking, I'm going to change this, and I'm going to introduce this legislation, and I'm going to do all of these things. And I quickly learned it wasn't about me at all. Very specifically because I did not have a lot of power in that structure. So how was I going to be able to amplify their voices, talk about what mattered to the people of the 35th District in a way that made them feel heard, and hopefully, if not accomplishing what they wanted me to do, at least made it known what was on their mind. So, super challenging, but really I learned a ton of valuable lessons down there. I'm like a sort of a team sport mentality. So it was sort of a team sport, but I sort of, sports analogies. It was more like a track team. Everybody was doing their own individual thing, but at the end we were on the same team, we're in the same uniform, trying to get those team wins. But every district so very different, and what I needed to accomplish for my constituency very different from my colleagues, right? So that was a really unique learning experience, and doing that against the backdrop of a very fast-changing national political landscape. And at the time, the Governor Kasich, was running for president. So there was a different lens on the state of Ohio, and what we were doing looked different, I think, than a lot of general assemblies before. I learned a lot about the process. I learned a lot about how government really works and how it doesn't work. So again, not glamorous or glorious, but very impactful on who I am, both professionally and personally.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds like a great experience, which gave you a taste of politics, and then you continued to stay in that. You get this great opportunity to work for the county executive in Summit County. And so now you're doing that.
Right.
What has that experience been like, and what have been some of the challenges that you faced?
I very firmly believe that local government is where the most impact really can be. So I am grateful to the executive for tapping me and saying, how would you like to come back to county government and work on my administration? It's been the most rewarding part of my career. And I felt very good about the work I'd done as a state rep with the limited ability that I had. And I feel incredibly proud of the work I did as a prosecutor and the families I helped and the law enforcement community that I, helped along the way. But the impactful work that the executive has empowered me to do in this position is truly my greatest accomplishment. The way that our county here touches people and connects them with resources and meets people where they're at to get them where they're going. I'm incredibly proud of that.
Yeah. Over 500,000 people.
Yeah, 540,000 people.
It's a lot of people to be responsible for.
It is.
Yeah.
But I said this to our cabinet, it's been a challenge with some of the executive orders coming from the federal government and cuts to critical funding. I looked around the table at the directors and the senior staff that we have, and I truly feel that this community came through the pandemic as good as or better than any other similarly situated community because of the leadership we had at that table. And we've only strengthened that team since then. So I said, we've been in really tough positions before and we have thrived. We are going to do the same thing now. So I'm surrounded by incredible professionals who are carrying the work that provides service to all these 540,000 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. It's a good team. They're a good team to have when you're a Summit County resident.
Yeah. awesome. So the question begs, would you consider running if our current county executive were to retire, and or if there was a mayoral race that interested you?
I'm not talking about mayor. Whew.
Put you on the spot.
Right. I have the best.
Just curious.
I think I have the best job ever because the executive is so well respected in this community, and it's her name on the door and it's her name on the sign, and the buck stops with her and she takes that responsibility. But she empowers us to be creative and innovative and do the good work. I'm able to get down into the weeds on some things, and I'm able to delegate on others. So I feel like I am lucky to be in the position I'm in, and I'm here as long as she's here. She keeps winning, I keep working, and everybody's happy.
Gotcha.
Yeah. She's a great boss in that she's got finance people, she's got economic development people. You know, I sort of do a little bit of everything for her, but she's very communicative. She's, you know, we sometimes tell her, you're in the weeds, you got to get out. You know, I need you to go shake some hands. I need people to see you in the community. Right. Let us worry about the spreadsheets and the details of the contracts. And but she's very involved and likes to be kept up to speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in all of your experience in your career, was there a moment, or have there been a few moments where you've seen some success where you're like, wow, I'm so proud of what I've done here?
Yeah, when I came to work for the executive, the country, Ohio, specifically Summit County, was really in the throes of an opioid crisis. I mean, people were dying every day, and people still are. But the magnitude of the crisis was really, really powerful at that time. And I had spent the last 2 years at the State House having nearly weekly press conferences, calling on the governor to do something, to invest rainy day funds, to enact legislation that was meaningful and not punitive, and to look at addiction in a different way. And there was just really a void of leadership. So when I came to Summit County, I was really coming at the executive like, we need to do this. We need to file a lawsuit. We need to hold them accountable. Be the person. And she was like, could you wait maybe a minute since you've been here, and we'll talk about this realistically and rationally. And I started working for her in March. In October, she very publicly declared a state of emergency in this county because of the opioid epidemic. And then in December, we filed a lawsuit against 11 distributors and 3 manufacturers of opioids. So in December of 2017, we filed the suit, and October 23rd-ish of 2019, we were standing on the courthouse steps of the federal court doing press statements about the largest settlement that had ever been accomplished.
Yeah.
So, at that moment, sort of the full circle effect was so powerful.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know at the time what we'd be able to do with that money. But to know that, I had come in, tried to be the voice of the community, because that was the number one concern of the constituents I had when I was in the State House, was the opioid epidemic. But to see that we could get it done at the local level was really gratifying. Now, I say that all acknowledging that the only reason we were having that moment was because of so much profound loss and suffering, and
right.
It's ongoing.
Right.
But to know that government worked in that moment felt like a really powerful thing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations. That was a big win, and I was privy to that. In fact, my company, we've been involved. We worked with the ADM board for a lot of years, and then assisted with the Opiate Task Force, Summit County Opiate Task Force website. So I got to learn a lot about these challenges and issues. And then actually a couple months ago, do you know Travis Bornstein?
Oh, yes.
So he was on the show and talking about what he went through, him and
Sure.
his wife went through, and then the result of that, Tyler's Redemption's
Absolutely.
place, which is absolutely amazing
It is
place.
an amazing place.
So, and we talked a lot about, and like you, he's been a huge advocate for change.
Absolutely.
And the stigma associated with addiction. So we're making progress, but we certainly have a ways to go. But I think we need to celebrate the wins, because we could get really caught up in everything else. Well, that's awesome that you guys were able to do that, and we're starting to see those funds be dispersed.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll see more change happen.
Absolutely.
Right? More positive.
That's the plan.
Results. So it's going to take some time.
For sure. We've invested $15 million back into the community already, and are about to invest a significant amount with the community foundation, so that it remains a resource into perpetuity for this community.
Endowment.
Yes.
Yeah, which is beautiful.
It is. It's a good thing. I know that, like I said, I recognize the cost that was paid for that.
Yep.
But we can only do better when we know better. And so just trying to move that conversation forward about addiction and stigma, and acknowledging that this was something that was done to us by, Big Pharma, and how we react to that and how we abate that problem. Having the resources to do that now is a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about leadership. I know you and I have had some conversations about leadership, and obviously you've been in a leadership role for quite some time. What would you say are some of your leadership characteristics?
I think probably what I would describe my leadership style, it's intentional. I try to be really intentional about communicating and mentoring and team building. It doesn't happen by accident. I feel like those things that I've just talked about come pretty natural to me. I'm very outgoing. I'm not shy. I'm pretty outspoken. But being intentional about the way you bring people together and build a team and support the members of the team so that they are, there's no one way to lead. There are some people who need technical feedback, and some people who need a cheerleader. There are some people who need to be left alone, and there are some people who need constant communication. So understanding the way in which you can get the best performance out of those members of the team, I think probably is what I try and focus on, and being really intentional about reaching out to those people in those specific ways. And I think, there's nothing wrong with calling yourself a leader. I believe that I am. I believe I work really hard at it. And I don't shy away from somebody saying, like, as a leader, you and I have talked about that. It's a privilege.
It is.
And it's one I take really seriously. So I try to be intentional about getting better at it and accepting feedback in ways that, how can I do this better? What's not working? What do you see that I'm not seeing? Those types of conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. I approach it the same way. In fact, my focus word for this year was intentionality.
Nice.
Just being able to actually say no more.
Yeah.
Like you, I'm sure, very resourceful person, huge network, lots of people coming at you, which is great. I love to help people, but sometimes we need to say no, and so that we can really be more intentional on, the things that are, I guess, most important to us and our people. But I love that in terms of being a leader, especially within an organization, because the way that I approach it, and we talk about it in my company here, we look at the love language of each person. We take kind of that love language of the work love language. And that's all about spending time getting to know your people.
Right.
That's really what it boils down to. And when you do that, you can be more intentional. And that's taking it from, this isn't just a job. You're a human being. You're a person. And I want you to be as happy as you can be. But I also recognize you're probably going through something. And if we can't have that conversation, right, and build that trust, then it is just a job. And I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. but I'm going to assume that everybody's struggling with something, just as
For
I
sure.
am. We all are, right?
Yes.
So I love that. If your team would describe you in one word, or let's actually take the county executive.
Oh, Boise.
If she could describe you in one word, what would she say, you think?
I would hope that she would say loyal.
Okay.
I do my very best to approach situations in a way that she will be proud of, and that she would, if she were standing there doing it herself, she would be good with those decisions. Yeah. Like I said before, it's her name on the door, and I am always very cognizant of that. And sometimes when she and I have a disagreement, it ends with me saying, "It's your name on the door, ma'am. If this is,
Right.
if you want it, I'm getting it for you. If you like it, I love it." So I think that she would come back to that. I would hope.
Yeah. And I would think that that's really important for the role that you're in.
Yes.
To be loyal.
Absolutely.
But also to have some autonomy as well, which it sounds like you've said the word empowerment several times, and I know that's important. And that took a while for me personally to be able to do that, especially being a business owner, because it's, it was all about me, and was worried, and, it's my brand and my name.
Sure.
And eventually it's like, well, it takes a village. If you really want to move the needle, you need to surround yourself with good people, but you also need to allow them to do what you hire them to do.
That's it.
That was a lesson learned for me, and but I got there, and
Our friend Gert showed me that.
Yeah.
That I think I do my best to empower my team, because that's all I ever wanted. I just wanted to be able to make decisions and do what I knew I could do. So like you, I try and hire the very best people I can, and then I just get out of their way.
Yeah.
And support them when they need it and check in on them when they need it. But I find that if you hire good people, treat them well, support them when they need it, the work tends to take care of itself. Yeah, right. I keep saying, as we're facing these sort of new headwinds with cuts to funding and changes in the services we deliver, I just keep focusing on taking care of the people who take care of the people. If I can do that, they will keep doing the work. Right. So taking care of that group that then takes care of the next and the next and the next until it reaches, the residents.
Right. What's one misconception about local government and or the legal system that you wish you could change, if you could?
The people who work in local government are so committed. I mean, I work with the best people. They care deeply about the services that are provided. They work their tails off day in and day out. And nobody ever got rich in public service, right? I mean, these are highly educated folks who really could do different things with their lives, but they're committed to the services we provide. And so I get real hot if I hear somebody, sort of using it in a pejorative, like, oh, government worker. No, those are public servants. They are doing the work of making sure your toilets are flushing, the sewers are running, that people are being enrolled in Medicaid, that, your streets are being swept, bridges are being repaired, that there is appropriate accommodation at the jail, that, all of these things that people, I think, sometimes take for granted or don't understand or don't even stop to think about how it happens.
Right.
The people I work with are just phenomenal and deserve all of the respect and praise. I'm not here for this narrative that there's so much fat that needs to be cut in government and that, government workers are lazy. Like, I'm not here for that. And I'll fight you about that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's funny. And you're right. We do take it for granted, but sure enough, when something breaks or something goes wrong,
that's right.
Right. Then you are like, oh yeah, there's a reason. And I think if we just had a little bit more gratitude We talk a lot about that on the show, but
nobody wants to talk about the HVAC system at the jail until it impacts someone in their family.
right, exactly.
Right.
Yep. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
That resting is not quitting. You know, we talked about like needing to like say no sometimes, and yeah, you know, this like hard work, and we're of sort of that same era where you just got to grind, right? There's this sort of nobility in never taking vacation or coming to work sick and gutting it out. And I have paid the price of that. And I would go back and say to myself, you know, the only strength doesn't have to come from suffering. Like, take a break, rest, recover, take care of your body, take care of your mental health, your physical health, instead of just going, and never giving yourself a little bit of time to recover. I think that is one thing I wish I could go back and say. I struggle with it now.
Yeah,
You know, I think there's a certain, I am envious and proud of the 20-somethings who work for me because they prioritize it, and they should. Burnout is real. Your physical health can never be, you know, overvalued. So I'm trying to take a cue from them and prioritizing health first, and making sure that I take a break when I need to. It's hard. And when you're raising kids, you know, what do we do on the weekends? Well, I go to volleyball and lacrosse tournaments, you know, but I'm lucky to have people who make it fun, and my kids are great. But resting is not quitting. And that's something I'm still trying to work on.
Yeah. Amen, sister. I hear you on that. Because, cut from the same cloth, burning the candle on both ends. And I will tell you, when you get into your 50s, which I'm in, you cannot do that any longer.
Right.
And you quickly realize that the work that you're producing later in the day is not good quality work. And it's like, okay, should I continue working just to check off a box and to feel good about myself, or should I limit the amount of time I spend, be more intentional, and focus on the quality? So for me, it's about working smarter, not necessarily harder. Right. And not getting caught up in that blue collar grind that I was so proud of, you know, like, and you're right. We'd wear that on our lapels. And it's interesting to me that we have the younger generation that we're taking nods from. And I think COVID brought a lot of this to light.
Absolutely.
So if there was anything that positive that came out of that, that's certainly one of it, and mental health awareness. But, well, this is great segue. Like, so what do you do? What does Greta do for self-care? What do you do to take care of yourself? What are some rituals or habits? Because you're a busy woman. You're a single mom raising two teenage girls and in a very high-profile role. So how do you do all of that, but also take care of you?
Again, lucky. My kids made friends early on in school with some great girls who have these wonderful families. And so I find that the way I, like when am I exhaling? When I'm sitting with who are my dear friends now, our kids are playing or goofing off together or playing sports together, or they're in the pool together, and we're sitting and, we're talking about what it means when you're a working parent and you're trying to juggle 5 different things, and just sort of that camaraderie that comes from a shared experience. So for me, being able to like decompress with other parents who are going through these crazy teenage times of managing emotions and schedules and academics, I'm really lucky to have that. But I'm also really lucky to have just an incredible group of friends who check in on me, and we can have breakfast or lunch, or again, just having built a really good group of people around me has, I feel like, saved me every time.
Yeah. We need to get off our island. We need to have the friend group or thinking group.
Yes.
It's important. Who's a leader that you admire? We'll do some lightning round, quick
Yeah,
question.
it's funny. I was thinking about that. I could give you 50 right
Sure,
now.
yeah.
But there is a woman we don't work directly together, but we're in a lot of meetings together. Christine Mayer, who leads the GAR Foundation.
Yeah, I know Christine.
I just admire her so much because I think we're very different. I look at the way she quietly leads. She is very thoughtful. I've never seen her react to something where I tend to have to pull myself back from, speaking too quickly, or so I'm trying to take some cues from her. During the pandemic, the administrative judge at the time, Judge Jones, I saw her being very deliberative and thoughtful about it. And so those two women, I feel like I'm looking at, and I've been able to see what I'd like to be more of, which is a little bit less immediately react, a little bit more, let me sleep on this. And so I've really tried to work on that in the last few years, where I might have immediately popped off. I'm trying to sleep on it. And if I still feel like popping off the next day, it's probably okay to pop off. More than half the time, it's not worth it. The other part is I'm like you, finding that at the end of the day, if it's making me really upset, am I tired? Am I hungry? Am I overstimulated? What is this problem going to look like tomorrow? And would I address it differently? Personnel matters. I also feel very strongly that if you don't look at everything like an emergency, which I tend to do sometimes, you just get a better result. Like, nobody is elbow deep in anybody's chest on the 8th floor of the Ohio building. There are very few things that are true emergencies.
Right.
So trying to take a deep breath, because, during the pandemic, everything felt like an emergency. And so I was trying to be really proactive, and my form of leadership, I think, was good at the time. Somebody needed to say something.
Right.
But now I'm trying to be a little bit more thoughtful and deliberative. And the executive is an excellent role model of that.
Yeah.
She does not have knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah.
Very thoughtful. Let's talk about it, and then let's talk about it again, and then we'll talk about it again.
Right.
So that's women like that. I feel I'm watching and seeing what I'd like to be more of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Greta, how do you define success? Like, how, if somebody were to give your eulogy at the end of the road, what would you hope that they would say?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to get emotional to think about my kids in that equation. To have healthy, happy children who grow into healthy, happy adults is really what I'm most concerned about right now. And they're 13, so happy is fleeting. Professionally, I don't know how I define success, because, like I said, it's always a 5-minute plan. So at the end of every day, I sort of, when I'm crawling into bed, do I feel like I did my best that day? And do I feel good about the work that I did? I've waited tables. I've, cleaned restaurants. I've had weird, odd jobs. But I always felt successful, air quotes, at the end of the day, because I felt like I was contributing to something.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess as I'm talking about it, do I feel like I contributed in a meaningful way that day? I won a lot of criminal trials. I was successful in passing legislation at a time when Democrats were not.
Right.
So success, yeah, but I felt like I contributed to the greater good in some way. So I guess that's it at the end of each day.
Yeah. Living a life of purpose and meaning.
Yes. I like that. Sounds much more eloquent. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that's the same for me. It's not money, toys, things, winning awards or all these accolades. It's more about, am I just happy?
Right.
That's my reflection point at the end of every day. Am I happy doing what I'm doing? And am I making a change?
Right.
Am I making a change? And that's why I shifted to or transitioned into this kind of new career of mine, is to be a coach in the mental fitness space,
Right.
and to be a keynote speaker, inspirational, motivational, and this show to inspire and motivate people to become their best selves. And that's what I'm trying to do, is just be 1% better every day. And that feels good, right? To be able to contribute in a small way, to have some legacy that at least I cared and I tried.
Sure. I think you're well on your way.
Yeah, we're all just trying to do a little bit of something.
People are, generally speaking, everybody's doing the best they can.
Yeah, I do believe that. And I believe there's good in every person, and that's, I think, if you can lead with empathy,
Yes.
and make that assumption that people are, struggling to some degree, then
Right.
then you can start to kind of put yourself in their shoes, And if we do that, I think we're a hell of a lot better off. So
Certainly.
Greta, this has been great. I love
It went so fast.
chatting with you.
Yes.
So just proud and impressed of everything you've accomplished.
Well, thank you.
And what I'm really excited just to see what you're going to do next. So we're very fortunate to have you here locally to be a part of our community, and
Thank you for that.
fighting for us and our people in Summit County. If there was one thing that you could leave our listeners, our young leaders or our seasoned leaders, what would that be?
To the young ones, trust your gut. Always. Always, always, always listen to that internal voice. It should be your guide. Let that be your lighthouse always. And for the established leaders, continue to collaborate. Do not go into a silo when things are starting to feel a little more overwhelming and we're all facing different headwinds than we have in the last several years. Just continue to be the collaborative, natured people that you are.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
This was great. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Bolt Podcast. I appreciate you spending some time with us today, and it's been a pleasure being part of your journey toward growth, transformation, and leadership. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and leave a review. It truly helps us reach more people like you. Interested in taking your leadership to the next level? Visit toddbirch.com to learn more about my keynote speaking, corporate training programs, and my positive intelligence coaching. Look, I'm here to help you build the mental resilience and leadership skills that drive lasting change. And remember, progress comes from small, consistent steps. Keep moving forward, my friends. And before we wrap, a quick reminder, the information shared on the Bolt Podcast, along with anything from toddbirch.com or my social media channels, is for informational and educational purposes only. We all need support, and if you're seeking meaningful guidance, one of the best things you can do is talk to a licensed professional. Whether that's a physician, therapist, or coach, they can provide the support and care you deserve. The content on this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you're facing a medical emergency or need immediate assistance, please reach out to the appropriate healthcare provider or emergency services. Hey guys, take care of yourself, stay kind to your mind, and remember, help is always available when you need it. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.